The rain was falling so hard that night that I couldn't tell if the wetness on my face came from the sky or from my own tears. I was kneeling on cold pavement, my belongings scattered around me in garbage bags. Everything I owned, thrown at me like I was nothing more than trash to be disposed of. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the words still ringing in my ears. "You should have died in that fire 23 years ago. We should never have taken you in." Those words came from the woman I had called mother for over 2 decades. But here is where my story takes a turn that even I could never have imagined. Because just as I was about to collapse completely, 2 black luxury cars pulled up in front of me. Maybach sedans, the kind that cost more than most people's houses. The doors opened simultaneously, and 2 men stepped out, both devastatingly handsome, both dressed in suits that probably cost more than everything in those garbage bags combined. They looked at me like I was something precious, something lost that had finally been found. And the taller one, with eyes that held both pain and hope, spoke words that would change my life forever. "Ha Yun-so," he said, his voice trembling. "We've been searching for you for 23 years. You're our sister, our real sister, and it's time for you to come home." Wait, what did he just say? Before I reveal what happened next, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. I want to know which corner of this beautiful world you're in. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is going to take you on a journey you won't forget. Trust me, you'll want to be here for every single chapter. Now, let me take you back to the beginning to help you understand how I ended up on my knees in the rain, and why 2 billionaire CEOs were standing in front of me claiming I was their blood. My name is Ha Yun-so. At least, that's the name I grew up with. But for 23 years, I lived as Baek Yun-so, the adopted daughter of the Baek family. I was told I was rescued from a fire when I was just a baby. The Baeks said they found me abandoned near a burning building, crying and alone, with nothing but a small bracelet with a butterfly pendant. They told me they took me in out of the goodness of their hearts, that they saved me, that I owed them everything. And I believed them. God, how I believed them. I spent my entire life trying to be worthy of their kindness. While their biological daughter, Baek Na-ri, attended the best schools and wore designer clothes, I worked. I cleaned, I cooked, I served. I was the family's personal servant disguised as their daughter. "Yun-so, the floors aren't clean enough. Do them again." "Yun-so, Na-ri needs her laundry done. Make sure her white blouses are perfect." "Yun-so, we have guests coming. You'll eat in your room tonight. We don't want them to know about you." Every birthday, Na-ri received mountains of gifts while I got a single cupcake, if I was lucky. Every holiday, I spent in the kitchen while they laughed and celebrated. Every night, I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I had done wrong, why I wasn't good enough to be loved. But I kept telling myself it would get better. I believed that if I just worked harder, smiled more, complained less, they would finally see me as their daughter. I was such a fool. My adopted father, Baek Sung-ho, ran a moderately successful construction company. My adopted mother, Baek Mi-ran, spent her days at country clubs pretending to be wealthier than they actually were. And Na-ri, beautiful, cruel Na-ri, was their golden child who could do no wrong. I remember the day everything changed like it was happening right now. It was 3 months ago. Na-ri had just gotten engaged to a man named Kwon Jun-ki, the son of a wealthy pharmaceutical company owner. The Baek family was ecstatic. This marriage would elevate their social status beyond anything they could achieve on their own. The engagement party was massive. I spent 3 days preparing, cooking, cleaning, arranging flowers, making sure every detail was perfect. And when the night arrived, I wore a simple dress I had saved months to buy, hoping, just hoping, that maybe tonight I could stand with my family and celebrate too. I was wrong. "What do you think you're doing?" Nadi hissed at me when she saw me near the main hall. "You're not a guest. You're the help. Go back to the kitchen where you belong." "But I thought—" "You thought what? That you're actually part of this family?" She laughed, that cold, cutting laugh I had heard 1,000 times. "You're nothing, Yunsol. You've always been nothing. The only reason my parents kept you around was because you were useful. But now that I'm marrying into the Kwan family, we don't need you anymore." Her words hurt, but I tried to push them aside. I told myself she was just stressed about the wedding. But then, 1 week before Nadi's wedding, everything fell apart. I was cleaning Nadi's room when I found them. Documents hidden in her desk drawer. Adoption papers. But not just any adoption papers. My adoption papers. And attached to them was something that made my blood run cold. A photograph of 2 young boys, perhaps 8 and 10 years old, holding a baby girl. On the back, someone had written, "Cha Chae-won, Cha To-hyun, and baby Cha Yun-so. The Cha family heirs. October 1999. Cha Yun-so. That was my name. My real name. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped the papers. The Cha family. I knew that name. Everyone in Korea knew that name. Cha Corporation was one of the largest conglomerates in Asia, worth billions. And the current CEOs were 2 brothers who had inherited the company after a terrible tragedy. A fire that had killed their parents, and supposedly their baby sister. A fire. A baby sister. My heart stopped. "What are you doing in my room?" I spun around to find Nadi standing in the doorway, her eyes fixed on the papers in my hand. "You found those," she said, and her voice was different now, colder, more dangerous. "You weren't supposed to find those." "What is this?" I whispered. "Who am I? What did your family do?" Nadi walked toward me slowly, taking the papers from my trembling hands. "You want to know the truth, Yunsol? Fine, I'll tell you. You're not some orphan my parents rescued out of kindness. You're Cha Yunsol, the missing heiress of Cha Corporation. 23 years ago, my father was a nobody who worked at the Cha mansion. When the fire started, he saw an opportunity. He took you. He disappeared. And he built his entire life on the money he made by hiding you. I couldn't breathe. Your brothers never stopped looking for you," Nadi continued, almost enjoying my shock. "For years, they offered rewards, hired investigators, never gave up hope. But my father was careful. He changed your name, moved cities, made sure no one would ever connect the dots. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're dangerous now." Nadi's eyes narrowed. Junki's father started doing background checks on our family. If anyone discovers who you really are, everything my parents built will be destroyed. Their reputation, their business, everything. "So what are you going to do?" Nadi smiled, and it was the most terrifying smile I had ever seen. "We're going to make sure you disappear, permanently." That night, I was dragged from my room by Baek Sung-ho himself. Miran stood behind him, arms crossed, face hard as stone. "You've been nothing but a burden," Sung-ho spat. "We fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us? By snooping through things that aren't your business? You kidnapped me, I said, finding my voice despite my terror. You stole me from my family. We saved you, Miran screamed. Do you think those rich brothers of yours would have cared about a baby? We gave you a life. You gave me slavery. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. My face burned, but I didn't cry. I was done crying for these people. They threw me out that night, in the rain, with nothing but garbage bags filled with my meager possessions. Nadi watched from the window, a satisfied smile on her face. And that's when the 2 black cars arrived. That's when my life truly began. The 2 men stood before me like something out of a dream, or perhaps a drama that I never thought I would find myself living. The taller one stepped forward first. He had sharp features, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes that held 2 decades worth of pain. He removed his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders without saying a word. Yunso, he said again, softer this time. My name is Cha Jae-won. I'm your oldest brother. And this, he gestured to the other man, is Cha Do-hyun, your second brother. Do-hyun was slightly shorter, with a warmer face and eyes that were already glistening with tears he was fighting to hold back. We found you, he whispered. After all this time, we finally found you. I should have been relieved. I should have felt joy. But all I could feel was confusion, suspicion, and a desperate need to understand. How? I managed to ask. How did you find me? Jaewon's jaw tightened. We received an anonymous tip 3 days ago. Someone sent us photographs, documents, DNA evidence. Everything we needed to confirm that you were alive, and that the Beck family had been hiding you. An anonymous tip? Who would have done that? Who else knew the truth? We've been watching you since then, Do-hyun added. We wanted to approach you properly, but when we saw them... He looked toward the Beck house, and his expression turned dark. When we saw what they did to you tonight, we couldn't wait any longer. I was still kneeling on the wet ground, clutching the jacket around my shoulders like a lifeline. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. I know this is overwhelming, Chaewon said, kneeling down to meet my eyes. I know you have no reason to trust us, but I need you to believe that we have spent every day of the past 23 years searching for you. Our parents died in that fire, Yunsol. We were told you died too, but I never believed it. I never stopped looking. His voice cracked on the last words, and something in my chest cracked with it. We have the original documents, Do-hyun said, pulling out his phone. Birth certificates, photographs, DNA tests we had prepared the moment we received the tip. Everything matches. You are Cha Yun-sol, the youngest heir of Cha Corporation. Our sister. He showed me a photograph on his phone. It was old, slightly faded, showing a beautiful woman holding a baby while 2 young boys stood on either side of her. The woman had my eyes. The baby had my face. That's our mother, Chaewon said quietly. That's you in her arms. And those are us, swearing to always protect our little sister. Tears I couldn't control began falling down my face. For 23 years, I had wondered who I really was, where I came from, whether anyone out there loved me. And now, kneeling in the rain with my pathetic belongings scattered around me, I was being told that I had a family all along, brothers who had never stopped searching, a legacy that had been stolen from me. Come with us, Chaewon said, extending his hand. Come home. I looked at his hand, then at the house behind me, the prison where I had spent my entire life being treated as less than human. The choice should have been easy. But years of conditioning had taught me to doubt everything, to expect nothing, to believe I deserved nothing. "Why should I trust you?" I whispered. Go-hyun crouched down beside his brother. "Because we're the only ones who never gave up on you. Because for 23 years, every birthday, we lit a candle and hoped you were still out there. Because even when everyone told us you were dead, we kept searching. And because right now, you have nowhere else to go. And we're not going to leave you on this street." His words broke something inside me. All my life, I had been waiting for someone to choose me, to fight for me, to believe I was worth saving. These strangers, these brothers I didn't remember, were offering exactly that. I took Taewon's hand. He pulled me to my feet, and for a moment, we just stood there. 3 siblings separated by tragedy, reunited by fate. "Let's go home," he said. The drive to the Cha mansion took 45 minutes, but it felt like crossing into another dimension entirely. The moment we passed through the gates, I knew I had entered a world I could never have imagined. The mansion was massive. No, massive was an understatement. It was a palace. Gardens that stretched for acres, fountains illuminated by soft lighting, buildings that looked like they belonged in a historical drama rather than modern Seoul. "This was our parents' home," Do-hyun explained as the car pulled up to the main entrance. "It's been empty for too long. We've been waiting for our family to be complete before we moved back in." Staff lined the entrance, and every single one of them bowed as I stepped out of the car. They looked at me with tears in their eyes, with hope, with joy. "Welcome home, Miss Yoon-so," an elderly woman said, her voice trembling. "I was your nursemaid before the fire. I never thought I would see this day." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process any of this. The interior of the mansion was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, artwork that I recognized from museum catalogs. This was my family's home. This was supposed to be my life. Chaewon led me to a sitting room where a portrait hung above the fireplace. A man and a woman, elegant and beautiful, with 3 children gathered around them. "Our parents," he said, "Cham Yong-jun and So Hae-won. They died protecting this family's legacy. And now, finally, we can honor them properly, because all their children are home." I stared at the portrait, at the faces of parents I would never remember, at the life that was stolen from me. "What happens now?" I asked. Chaewon and Do-hyun exchanged a look. "Now," Chaewon said, his voice turning hard, "we get justice. The Beck family will pay for what they did. Every single one of them. But first," Do-hyun added more gently, "you rest. You heal. You learn what it means to be loved and cared for. Everything else can wait." They showed me to a bedroom that was larger than the entire Beck house. There was a closet already filled with clothes in my size, a bathroom with a tub that looked like a small pool, and a bed so soft I almost cried when I touched it. "How did you know my size?" I asked, bewildered. "We've been watching over you for 3 days," Do-hyun admitted. "We wanted to make sure everything was perfect for when you came home. The moment we confirmed who you were, we started preparing. This room, these clothes, everything. It was all chosen with you in mind. For the first time in my life, someone had thought about me. Someone had prepared for me. Someone had wanted me." I broke down completely. Do-hyun caught me before I could fall.
holding me as I sobbed years of pain and loneliness into his shoulder. Chae-won stood beside us, one hand on my back, silent but present. "It's okay," Do-hyun whispered. "You're safe now. You're home. And no one will ever hurt you again." That night, I lay in my new bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Just hours ago, I was being thrown out like garbage. Now I was in a mansion,
Surrounded by people who claimed to love me, being told I was an heiress to a billion-dollar fortune. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. But as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of discovery and adjustment. Chae-won was exactly what you would expect from the CEO of a massive corporation. Controlled, calculating, and commanding. He ran Cha Corporation with an iron fist, having taken over at the young age of 18 after their parents' death. He had sacrificed his youth, his freedom, and his personal happiness to keep the company alive and to fund the search for me. Do-hyun was the softer of the two, though no less powerful. He handled the creative side of the business, the marketing, the public relations, the human element that balanced Chae-won's coldness. He was the one who made sure I ate, who checked on me every morning, who tried to make me laugh when the weight of everything became too heavy. Together, they taught me what family was supposed to feel like. I learned that my father, Cha Myung-jun, had been a visionary who built Cha Corporation from nothing. I learned that my mother, So Hae-won, had been an artist whose paintings still hung in galleries around the world. I learned that the fire that killed them had been ruled an accident, but my brothers had always suspected foul play. The fire started in 3 places simultaneously, Chae-won told me one evening as we sat in his study. The investigators said it was an electrical fault, but we never believed it. Someone wanted our family dead, Yoon-so, and someone made sure you disappeared that night. You think the Becks were involved? Baek Sung-ho worked for our parents as a groundskeeper. He had access to the estate. He knew the layout. And when the fire happened, he was the only employee who wasn't accounted for. He vanished that night. With you. The implications were staggering. The people who raised me might have been responsible for my parents' deaths. They might have killed to get me. And I had lived under their roof, served them, called them family for 23 years. "What are you going to do?" I asked. Chae-won's eyes turned cold, colder than I had ever seen them. "I'm going to destroy them," he said. "Every single one of them. They will lose everything they have, everything they've built on the foundation of our family's blood. And then, when they have nothing left, they will face justice for their crimes." I should have felt satisfaction hearing those words. These were the people who had stolen my life, who had treated me like a slave, who had nearly killed me. But all I felt was emptiness, because destroying them wouldn't bring back my parents. It wouldn't give me back the childhood I lost. It wouldn't erase 23 years of pain. But maybe, just maybe, it would ensure that they never hurt anyone else again. 3 weeks into my new life, I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could actually be happy. My brothers were nothing short of extraordinary. Taewon, despite his cold exterior, showed his love in practical ways, making sure I had the best tutors to catch up on the education I was denied, the best therapists to help me process my trauma, the best of everything that money could buy. Do-hyun showed his love in warmer ways,
teaching me to play the piano that our mother had loved, taking me to her favorite galleries, helping me understand the family I had lost. But it wasn't just my brothers who made my new life feel real. It was also the man who walked into my life like a storm I didn't see coming. His name was Kang Tae-jun, and he was Taewon's right-hand man, the chief legal counsel for Cha Corporation, and one of the most brilliant lawyers in Seoul. He was also, as I would soon discover, the most infuriatingly complicated person I had ever met. The first time I saw him,
He was arguing with Taewon about something legal and boring that I didn't understand. He had sharp eyes behind silver-framed glasses, a jaw that could cut diamond, and a voice that commanded attention without trying. He was beautiful in that cold, untouchable way that made you want to melt the ice around him just to see what was underneath. "This must be the famous lost sister," he said when he noticed me standing in the doorway of Taewon's office. His tone was neutral, almost dismissive. "Taejun," Taewon warned. "I'm just observing," Taejun said, tilting his head as he studied me. "She doesn't look like she belongs here." I should have been insulted, but something in his eyes told me he wasn't being cruel. He was testing me. "And you don't look like someone who should be telling me where I belong," I shot back before I could stop myself. Do-hyun, who had been standing behind me, choked on a laugh. Taewon's lips twitched, and Taejun, for just a moment, looked genuinely surprised. "Fair enough," he said finally. "Welcome to the family, Miss Cha." From that day on, Taejun became a constant presence in my life. He was assigned to help prepare the case against the Beck family, which meant he needed to interview me extensively about my experiences with them. It also meant spending hours in his office, surrounded by files and evidence, reliving every painful moment of my past. "Tell me about the punishments," he said during one of our sessions, his pen poised over a legal pad. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Every time they hurt you, every time they denied you food, every time they made you work when you should have been studying or playing. I need documentation for the abuse case." I looked down at my hands, trying to find the words. They never hit me in places that would show. That was a rule. Miran was very particular about it. If I had bruises, people might ask questions. "But they did hit you." "Yes." "How often?" "Almost every day when I was younger. Less when I got older, but that's only because I learned to be perfect, to never make mistakes, to anticipate what they wanted before they asked." Taejun was quiet for a moment. When I looked up, I saw something in his eyes that surprised me. Pain. Real, genuine pain. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I'm sorry you went through that." It was the first time he had shown anything beyond professional detachment. The first crack in his armor. "Why did you become a lawyer?" I asked suddenly, wanting to change the subject, wanting to learn something about him instead. He leaned back in his chair, considering the question. "Because I believe in justice. Because I believe that people who hurt others should face consequences. And because..." He hesitated. "Because someone I loved was hurt very badly once, and I couldn't save them. I became a lawyer so I could save others." I wanted to ask more, but the look in his eyes told me that wound was still too fresh to probe. "You'll get justice for me," I said instead. "I believe that." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "I will. I promise you that." Okay, I need to pause the story here because I have a question for you. Have you ever been treated like you didn't matter? Like you were invisible? Like your feelings didn't count? Like you existed only to serve others? If you have,
I want you to drop a comment and share your experience. And if you've overcome it, if you found your own version of the Cha brothers who reminded you of your worth, share that too. I want this to be a space where we lift each other up. Now, back to my story. As weeks turned into months, I began to transform. Physically, I was eating regular meals for the first time in my life. The gaunt hollows in my cheeks filled out. My skin, once sallow from exhaustion, gained a healthy glow. I learned to dress like the heiress I was supposed to be, to carry myself with the confidence that had been beaten out of me.
But the transformation was more than physical. I was learning to use my voice, to have opinions, to disagree with my brothers when I thought they were wrong, to make decisions for myself instead of waiting for someone else to tell me what to do. Do-hyun encouraged every bit of it. You have 23 years of opinions that were never allowed to exist, he told me. Let them out. We want to hear all of them. Even Chaewon, stoic as he was, softened when I started pushing back. You're more like Mother than we realized, he said once, almost smiling. She was never afraid to speak her mind either. But with healing came revelation, and some revelations were harder to bear than others. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Taejun called me to his office with an urgency that told me something was wrong. I found something, he said when I arrived. His face was pale. Something you need to see. He handed me a file. Inside were documents, photographs, bank statements, evidence that painted a picture more horrifying than I could have imagined. The fire that killed your parents wasn't an accident, he said. It was arson, deliberate, planned. I knew this already, or at least suspected it, but Taejun's next words sent ice through my veins. And Baek Sung-ho wasn't just a groundskeeper who saw an opportunity. He was hired. Someone paid him to start that fire. Someone paid him to kill your parents and to take you away. Who? I whispered. Taejun looked at me with something like sympathy. Your parents' business partner at the time. The man who took over 40% of Cha Corporation shares after their death. The man who has been a silent beneficiary of your disappearance for over 2 decades. He showed me a photograph. I didn't recognize the man in the image. Silver-haired, distinguished, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His name is Oh Jung-woo, Taejun said, and he's currently one of the most powerful men in South Korea. He hesitated. He's also what? He's also the man that Nadi Baek is marrying into. Kwon Jun-ki's mother is Oh Jung-woo's only daughter. This marriage isn't coincidental, Yoon-sol. It's planned. It's always been planned. The Baeks and the Ohs are connected. They've been connected since the night your parents died. The room spun around me. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought was random coincidence, was actually part of a larger conspiracy. The Baeks hadn't just stolen me for money. They had stolen me as part of a deal, a transaction. I was payment for a murder. And Nadi's wedding to Kwon Jun-ki wasn't about social climbing. It was about cementing alliances, about keeping secrets buried forever. We need to tell my brothers, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Taejun nodded. I already have a meeting scheduled, but there's one more thing you need to know. He pulled out another photograph. It showed Oh Jung-woo shaking hands with a younger Baek Sung-ho. Behind them, visible through a window, was a building engulfed in flames. The Cha mansion. The night my parents died. He didn't just hire Sung-ho, Taejun said quietly. He was there. He watched your parents burn.
and then he walked away with 40% of their empire. I stared at the photograph, at the man who had destroyed my family, who had orchestrated every moment of suffering I had endured. And for the first time since coming to the Cha mansion, I felt something stronger than hope. I felt rage. The meeting with my brothers lasted for hours. We went through every piece of evidence, every connection, every damning detail that linked Oh Jung-woo to our parents' murder. By the end, Chae-won's face was carved from stone, and Do-hyun's hands were shaking with barely contained fury. "I should have known," Tae-won said, his voice dangerously calm. "All these years, Jung-woo has been a thorn in my side at board meetings. He's blocked expansions, vetoed projects,
Done everything he could to undermine the company. And I thought it was just business rivalry. It was guilt, Taejun observed. Guilt and fear. He's been trying to weaken Cha Corporation because a strong company means more resources to investigate the fire, more resources to find the truth. And the wedding, Do-hyun added. The marriage between Nadi and Kwon Jung-ki. It's not just an alliance, it's a trap. Once they're married, the Becks become untouchable, connected to Oh's family by blood and law. When is the wedding? I asked. 2 weeks, Taejun said. They moved the date up. I think they're scared. They know we found you, and they're trying to consolidate power before we can act. Chae-won stood up, walking to the window that overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline. Then we have 2 weeks to destroy them. How? I asked. He turned to face me, and in that moment, I saw the ruthless businessman that the world feared. The man who had built Cha Corporation into a global power through sheer will and determination. First, we hit their finances. Oh Jung-woo has been using his shares in Cha Corporation as collateral for his other business ventures. If we can destabilize those ventures, he'll be forced to liquidate, potentially selling his shares to cover losses. Second, Do-hyun continued, we gather more evidence. Taejun, you'll need to work with our investigators to find witnesses, documentation, anything that can prove the arson was planned and that Oh was involved. And third, Chae-won said, looking directly at me, we make a public move. We announce to the world that Cha Yun-so has been found, that she is home, that the lost heir of Cha Corporation is ready to take her rightful place. You want to use me as bait, I said. No. His voice was firm. I want to use you as a weapon. They've built their power on your absence, on your silence, on the assumption that you would never be found. Your presence alone disrupts everything they've planned. Your voice destroys their secrets. I thought about his words. For 23 years, I had been nothing. A servant, a shadow, a forgotten child. Now my brothers were asking me to step into the light, to be seen, to be powerful. I'll do it, I said. Whatever you need. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation and strategy. Chae-won launched a coordinated assault on Oh Jung-woo's business interests. He called in favors, leveraged relationships, and used every resource at his disposal to make Oh's life as difficult as possible. Within days, stocks were tumbling, investors were panicking, and Oh Jung-woo was scrambling to maintain control of his empire. Meanwhile, Do-hyun worked with media contacts to prepare for my public debut. Press releases were drafted, interviews were scheduled. A narrative was constructed, the tragic but triumphant story of the lost Cha heiress, stolen from her family as a baby, finally reunited with her brothers after 23 years of survival and suffering. But it was Taejun who made the most crucial discovery. He found the witness we needed, Oh Jung-woo's former driver, a man named Park Ki-soon, who had been dismissed years ago after a disagreement with his employer. Park Ki-soon had kept records, photographs, recordings, evidence of conversations where Oh Jung-woo had discussed the Beck situation and the original arrangement. It was enough. Finally, it was enough. The night before Nadi's wedding, my brothers hosted a gala at the Cha Mansion. It was framed as a celebration of the company's anniversary, but everyone who mattered knew the real reason. It was my introduction to society. I stood in front of a mirror in my room, dressed in a gown that cost more than everything the Becks owned. It was deep blue, almost black, with delicate silver embroidery that caught the light like stars. My hair was swept up, revealing the butterfly pendant that had been with me since infancy, the only piece of my real family that the Becks had never managed to take. There was a knock at my door. "Come in," I called. It was Taejun. He stepped inside and stopped, his expression shifting into something I couldn't quite read. For a long moment, he just looked at me. "You're stunning," he said finally. "They won't know what hit them." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Is that a compliment, counselor?" "An observation," he said, but there was a warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "And perhaps a personal admission." He crossed the room until he was standing in front of me. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and adjusted the butterfly pendant where it lay against my collarbone. "I never believed in fate," he said quietly. "I thought it was something people invented to explain coincidences. But meeting you, watching you transform, seeing you become who you were always meant to be." He met my eyes. "You've made me question a lot of things, Yoon-seo." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Taejun." "I know this isn't the time," he said, stepping back. "I know there are more important things happening tonight. But I needed you to know, before everything changes, that you matter. Not as an heiress, not as a weapon, not as a symbol. You matter because you're you. And He trailed off, and I saw something vulnerable in his eyes, something that matched the vulnerability I felt in my own heart. "When this is over," I said softly, "when everything is finished, ask me again." He nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I'll hold you to that." The gala was a spectacle. The Cha Mansion was filled with Seoul's elite, politicians, business leaders, celebrities, everyone who mattered in Korean society. They had come expecting a corporate celebration. What they got was a revolution. At precisely 9 o'clock, Chae-won took the stage. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. "For 23 years, Cha Corporation has carried a wound that many of you know about, the loss of our parents in a tragic fire and the disappearance of our youngest sibling, our baby sister, who was presumed dead." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Tonight, I stand before you to announce that our sister is not dead. She was stolen from us, kidnapped on the night our parents were murdered, and hidden away for over 2 decades by people who wanted to destroy our family." Gasps, whispers, cameras flashing. But despite everything they did to keep her from us, she survived, she endured, and she is here tonight to take her rightful place in our family. He extended his hand toward me. "Please welcome home Cha Yoon-seo, the lost heir of Cha Corporation." I walked onto that stage, and for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. The crowd erupted into applause. Cameras captured every moment. And across the room, I saw something that filled me with grim satisfaction. Oh Jung-woo's face twisted in horror and fear. He knew. He knew that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. And he was right. The morning after the gala, Seoul exploded. My face was everywhere: newspapers, television, social media. The story of the lost Cha heiress spread like wildfire, capturing the hearts and attention of millions. I was called a survivor, a symbol of hope, proof that even the most tragic stories could have happy endings. But we weren't finished, not even close. Nadi's wedding was scheduled for that evening. The Becks had refused to cancel despite everything that had happened, a desperate attempt to cement their alliance with the O family before it was too late. They didn't know that we had other plans. At 3 p.m, Taejun arrived at the Cha mansion with a stack of legal documents and a grim expression. "Arrest warrants," he said, spreading the papers across Chaewon's desk. "For Baek Sung-ho, Baek Mi-ran, and Oh Jung-woo. Charges include arson, kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, child abuse, fraud, and about a dozen other things I don't have time to list." "And Nadi?" I asked. Taejun hesitated. "She was a minor when most of the crimes were committed, but she's an accessory after the fact for concealing evidence and participating in the cover-up. She'll face charges too, though likely reduced ones." I should have felt satisfaction. These were the people who had destroyed my life. They were finally going to face justice, but all I felt was hollow. "What's wrong?" Do-hyun asked, noticing my expression. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought this would feel different, triumphant, but I just feel empty," Chaewon offered. I nodded. He walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "That's because revenge isn't really what you needed. What you needed was healing, recognition, family. The revenge is just cleanup, making sure they can't hurt anyone else." "He's right," Taejun added. "The real victory isn't watching them fall. The real victory is you, standing here, whole and healthy and loved. They tried to destroy you, and they failed. That's what matters." I looked at the 3 men surrounding me, my brothers, whatever Taejun was becoming. For the first time, I felt like I understood. "Let's finish this," I said. The wedding was being held at the Grand Hyatt Seoul, one of the most prestigious venues in the city. The Becks had spent a fortune on it, a fortune that, we now knew, had come from Oh Jung-woo's blood money. We arrived as the ceremony was about to begin. The entrance was grand, flowers everywhere, a string quartet playing, guests in their finest attire. No one expected what was about to happen. Chaewon walked in first, flanked by Do-hyun and a team of lawyers. I followed behind with Taejun at my side, and behind us came a squadron of police officers. The music stopped, heads turned, and Nadi, standing at the altar in her designer wedding dress, went pale as a ghost. "What is the meaning of this?" Baek Sung-ho demanded, rising from his seat in the front row. Chaewon stepped forward, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Baek Sung-ho, you are under arrest for the murder of Cha Myung-jun and So Hae-won, for the kidnapping of Cha Yun-so, and for over 2 decades of fraud and abuse." Police officers moved through the crowd, surrounding Sung-ho and Mi-ran. Panic erupted. Guests screaming, cameras flashing, the carefully planned wedding dissolving into chaos. "This is outrageous!" Mi-ran shrieked. "You can't do this! We have rights!" "You have the right to remain silent," one of the officers said, pulling her arms behind her back. "I suggest you use it." But the real confrontation was happening at the altar. Oh Jung-woo stood beside his grandson-in-law-to-be, Kwon Jun-ki. his face a mask of controlled fury. He knew that running was useless. He knew that his empire was crumbling. But he wasn't going to go quietly. "You think you've won, little girl?" he said as I approached, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think destroying me will bring back your parents? Will erase what happened?" "No," I said calmly. "Nothing will bring them back. But this will make sure you never hurt anyone else." "I made you," he snarled. "Without me, you would have died in that fire like you were supposed to. The Becks kept you alive because I told them to, as insurance, in case I ever needed leverage against your brothers. And now that insurance is what's destroying you." His face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful." "Oh, Jungwoo," Taejun interrupted, stepping forward with handcuffs in his hands. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, arson, kidnapping, and approximately 47 counts of financial crimes that our forensic accountants discovered in your records. I suggest you come quietly." For a moment, I thought he might resist, his hands clenched into fists, his eyes darting around the room, looking for escape. But there was none. His allies were already in custody. His family was staring at him in horror. His empire was gone. He held out his wrists. As the officers led him away, I turned to find Nadi still standing at the altar, frozen in shock. Her perfect wedding was in ruins. Her family was being arrested. Everything she had schemed and manipulated for was falling apart before her eyes. I walked up to her slowly, deliberately. "Nadi," I said. She looked at me with something between hatred and fear. "What do you want?" "I want you to know something." I leaned in close so only she could hear. "For 23 years, you made my life a living hell. You told me I was nothing. You told me I didn't deserve to be happy. You told me I should be grateful just to exist." Her lip trembled. "But you were wrong," I continued. "I am not nothing. I was never nothing. And now, while you rot in a prison cell, I will be living the life that was stolen from me, surrounded by family who loves me, building a future that you can never touch." I stepped back. "Enjoy your wedding night, Nadi. I hear the accommodations at Seoul Metropolitan Police Station are lovely this time of year." As officers led her away in her wedding dress, still bearing the shocked expression of someone whose world had just collapsed, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't triumph, exactly. It was closure. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of the Cha mansion, watching the sun set over Seoul. So much had changed in such a short time that sometimes I still couldn't believe it was real. Baek Sung-ho, Baek Mi-ran, and Oh Chung-woo were all awaiting trial, their assets frozen, their reputations destroyed. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Park Ki-soon's testimony alone was enough to ensure conviction. But Taejun had built a case so airtight that their lawyers were already negotiating plea deals. Nadi had been sentenced to 5 years for her role in concealing evidence and participating in my abuse. She would serve her time in a minimum security facility, which was more than she deserved. But the court had taken into account that she had been raised by criminals and manipulated since childhood. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Cha Corporation was thriving. With Oh Jung-woo's shares seized and redistributed, Chaewon had finally consolidated complete control of the company. The stock price had actually risen since the scandal, as investors viewed the elimination of internal corruption as a positive sign. And as for me, I was learning what it meant to live, really live. I had enrolled in university to study art history, honoring my mother's legacy in my own way. I had made friends, real friends who didn't know me as a servant or a victim, but simply as Yoon So. I had discovered that I loved spicy food, hated mornings, and had an unexpected talent for playing the piano that my mother had once loved. But the biggest change was standing behind me right now. "Deep thoughts?" Taejun asked, wrapping his arms around my waist. I leaned back into him, savoring his warmth. "Just thinking about how different everything is. How different I am." "You're not different," he said. "You're just, finally you. The person you were always meant to be, without anyone holding you back." I turned in his arms to face him. "When did you become such a philosopher, counselor?" "Around the same time I fell in love with you," he said simply. The words still made my heart flutter, even after months of hearing them. Our relationship had bloomed slowly, carefully, both of us wary of moving too fast, of complicating our healing with romance. But eventually, we had stopped fighting the inevitable. We fit together, in ways I had never imagined fitting with anyone. "I love you too," I said. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I thought about how far I had come, from kneeling in the rain with garbage bags to standing on a balcony being kissed by the love of my life. "Yoonso! Taejun! Dinner's ready!" Do-hyun's voice echoed from inside, breaking the moment. We pulled apart, laughing. "Coming!" I called back. We walked inside together, hand in hand, to where my brothers were waiting at a massive dining table that had once seated my parents and would now seat the family we were rebuilding. Chaewon sat at the head of the table, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. Do-hyun was already seated, arguing with a maid about whether the wine he had chosen was good enough. The elderly woman who had been my nursemaid, her name was Auntie Yong, and she had become my second mother, was fussing over the placement of dishes. This was my family. Not the one that had raised me, not the one that had hurt me, but the one that had found me, fought for me, and loved me unconditionally. "Before we eat," Chaewon said, standing and raising his glass, "I want to make a toast." We all raised our glasses. "To our sister," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "who survived the unsurvivable, who forgave the unforgivable, and who taught us all what it means to never give up hope. Yoonso, we spent 23 years searching for you, and now that we've found you, we will spend the rest of our lives making sure you never feel alone again." "To Yoonso," Do-hyun echoed. "To Yoonso," Taejun added, squeezing my hand. I felt tears prickling at my eyes, but for the first time in my life, they were tears of pure, uncomplicated joy. "To family," I said, raising my glass. "The one we're born into and the one we choose. To second chances, to new beginnings, and to never, ever giving up on the people we love." We drank, and then, surrounded by the people who had given me back my life, I ate a meal that tasted like heaven, not because of the food, but because of the company. Later that night, after dinner was finished and conversations had wound down, I found myself back on the balcony. Taejun had gone home, my brothers had retired to their rooms, and the mansion was quiet. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. 23 years ago, I was stolen from my family. I was given to monsters who called themselves my parents. I was taught that I was worthless, that I deserved nothing, that I should be grateful just to be allowed to exist. But I survived. I survived, and I found my way home. And now, standing here with the stars above me and my brothers sleeping safely inside, I finally understood the truth that had eluded me my entire life. I was never nothing. I was always something. I was loved. I was wanted. I was precious. And no one, not the Becks, not Oh Jong-woo, not anyone in the entire world, could ever take that away from me again. Before I finish, I have one last thing to say to you. Yes, you, the person watching this right now. This story exists because you made the choice to stay until the end. You gave your time, your attention, your heart to Yoon So's journey. And for that, I am endlessly grateful. But here's the thing. There are millions of people out there who need to hear this story. People who feel like Yoon So did. Unloved, unwanted, invisible. People who have been told they are nothing. People who have almost given up on the idea that life can ever get better. If you leave now without subscribing, without sharing this story, those people might never find it. They might never know that there is hope, even in the darkest moments. They might never see themselves in Yoon So's journey and realize that they too deserve a happy ending. Please, subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs it. Leave a comment about what Yoon So's story meant to you. Do it for the person who is sitting alone right now, feeling worthless, waiting for someone to tell them they matter. Because they do. You do. We all do. And sometimes, all it takes is one story to remind us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And remember, no matter what you've been through, no matter who has tried to break you, you are not nothing. You are something. You are everything. And your story is just beginning.